Now open to questions. Please introduce yourself and indicate who should respond to your question. Thank you. Yes.
Hello. Thank you very much indeed. My name is Olga Maitland, Defence and Security Forum, United Kingdom. May I address my question to Admiral Bhattacharya? You have given a very comprehensive view about how to monitor the maritime activity. Do you have a view or advice for civil cargo ships and civil ships traveling through the seas, how they should protect themselves? There is a debate as to whether they should have armed guards on board. And the second question is, should and how naval ships intervene when they see a civilian boat ship under attack?
Thank you for the question, Madam. Yes, it has become a controversial issue about the private maritime security providers, but then it has become legal. There are other countries which uses that, including Sri Lanka. It is certainly up to the ship owners to decide whether they would resort to carry what we call the onboard security teams. There is no metrics to prove whether it has given any contribution to the lower level of incident that the world has seen in the Somalian region. But as I shown you, there is a very grand coalition, about 40-50 countries. We have, I think at the moment also, Her Majesty's Australian ship Melbourne leaving the area after 6 months of deployment. So I link that to your first question, whether the navies will respond. I think that is the primary task of the navies. Whether the private merchant companies or whatever you call them resort or decide to have onboard security teams or not, the navies will collaborate. That is one of the very positive signs that the world has seen, because within 3 years the world has been able to reduce the numbers in large. I have shown you with statistics. Drastic change with 90% of change, only 11 incidents since 2013 in Somalia. But at the same time, you have seen an increase in the Malacca Strait, which Indonesia, Singapore and Malaysia is handling together. I think the incidence in that region was also lower, but then the last 2 years they have seen an increase. But then when you see the geography of that region, the straits, the three important straits, the Lombok, Malacca and the other strait, these 3 countries have shown that they are very capable with their navies to tackle that, and with their air arms supporting them. So it's a matter up to the merchant mariners to decide whether they want on-board maritime security operators. But whether they have them or not, the navies, all the navies have considered in our deliberations with all the other navies are considering and have considered it as one of the priority areas of the navies to give protection to the sea lanes of communication, which is one of the most, if not the most important duties of a navy.
Admiral, I'm sorry to press you a little bit further. Whilst it is perfectly appropriate to monitor and protect the sea lanes, if a merchant ship is under attack, should a naval ship intervene, or do they have to leave the merchant ship to its own devices?
The naval ship has to intervene.
It will.
It's very clear, madam.
Thank you, Admiral, for your very comprehensive presentation. I have two questions. What maritime domain awareness practices, operational practices, does the Sri Lankan Navy has been doing it in the recent past? And secondly, what kind of future initiatives does the Sri Lankan Navy propose to have with India in terms of both the on waters as well as the off waters and the international waters, actually? Thank you.
We have a system called the automatic identification system, which gives a very clear picture of the maritime domain. But the range is restricted. We have to go to a system where we are supported with the satellite, this thing. And I think this is that is the next way forward. For your specific question against India, yes. Today, even at this moment, our delegations are sitting with the Indian Navy in Colombo. We have come to the first step. We have finished the trials with the Indian Navy on sharing information out at sea, and if you go to our ops room, you will see that the Sri Lanka Navy is able to monitor all the ships that is flying around the south of the shipping traffic lane. And I don't think that is sufficient. We have to increase our range, which we need satellite technology, again, which is linked to funds. But then with the Indian Navy, I think we have the most closest cooperation. We share the pictures, we share the information, and we have our Maritime Rescue Cooperation Center at the Naval Headquarters, where we share information with all the navies around to respond in a search and rescue operation. But the problem is whether we have assets. So the MH370 is the best example. It will even we have the best of technologies these days. You have seen that many countries, all of us in the Indian Ocean region found it difficult to locate what happened to that. So there are loopholes. I don't think in the Sri Lanka Navy can within next 5 years say that we will have a very comprehensive maritime domain awareness system, but we are working towards that.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Chair and distinguished panelists for wonderful presentations. My question is to Ms. Viviana on the non-traditional security threats. You already said that in the Asia-Pacific region, the military who are in most of the cases first respondent. We all know that militaries are equipped, the capacity building of military is for meeting the traditional or conventional threats. But for meeting those challenges, there is a requirement that there is a balancing requirement for the militaries to also have some capacity building, also hands-on training for meeting these challenges. Do you think that your organization should involve with the national government or emphasize on the national government that the militaries are also equipped, or the capacity building of the military is done in a way so that they can effectively become the first respondents when it is a requirement? I can give you some example from the cases of Bangladesh. The Bangladesh government give emphasis on this aspect, and recently there are a lot of capacity building issues as far as the earthquake or the man-made disasters concerned. Also for the coastal rescue efforts, there are some efforts, but those are not adequate. So if your organization works with the national government as regards the capacity building and hands-on training, I think we can get better dividend. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for this question. Indeed, we are aware of the need to streamline training capacity building efforts across the region and making them more consistent and effective. So to achieve this objective, for this region, we have created a regional consultative group on humanitarian civil-military coordination for Asia and the Pacific. This group was formed as a result of a conference that took place in October 2014 in Thailand. And then we had an introductory session of this group last April 2015 in Singapore. And one of the objectives of this regional consultative group is to look at training and capacity building and how to, as I said, having a consistent framework where we have a program of capacity building for national and military and police actors across Southeast Asia and South Asia to really equip them with more understanding and knowledge to perform HADR functions in support of civilian authorities. So this is one initiative. More specifically, my organization has a training program and capacity building across South Asia. So we had the initiative last year, as they also mentioned, in Bangladesh, taking advantage of the program that they had implemented there. And our next focus of attention is, in fact, Sri Lanka. Just yesterday, I actually led a civil-military coordination workshop addressed to the Sri Lanka Tri-Forces. And next year, we have already planned with the Sri Lanka Army, with the support of General Pereira, a civil-military coordination course for Sri Lanka that will actually equip some of the representatives from the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force on conducting HADR missions and how to support civilian authorities and humanitarian partners. But more globally and regionally, the establishment of the Regional Consultative Group will have in place a consistent program over a number of years and a consistent framework for introducing training capacity building, targeting national military actors and advocating with national governments about the importance of these training programs.
Yes, one last question as we are eating into our refreshment time.
So I'm Brigadier Ajay Singh from the Indian Army, and I'm sorry, ma'am, but my question unfortunately addresses the only lady on the panel. It's about climate change. It's a very emotional issue because it concerns all of us. Drought, change in weather patterns, they're all very important emotional issues. We have seen the Kyoto Protocol and the second commitment in the Doha Amendment. There are countries, the Central African Republic, only 0.1 metric ton per year per citizen is the carbon emission. There are countries, I have the figure from the latest World Bank data which I just accessed, 37.2. Most Western countries are between 15 to 20 metric tons per person. I won't talk about India, we're sitting in Sri Lanka, just 0.7 metric tons. And yet, the first commitment, 192 people signed it, Canada withdrew in 2012, and all the countries who had mandatory commitments did not meet them. Despite it being an emotional issue, we are going into Paris with an understanding that yes, everyone must remain at their current levels and everyone must reduce. Do you think this will solve the problem? Unless we start looking at per capita carbon emission also as a target.
No, for sure. I mean, I completely agree with you. This is one of our greatest advocacy points when we discuss climate change as part of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And as much as possible at the highest strategic and political level, the United Nations is engaging this discussion with the member states who are treaty to the protocol. And also, as you mentioned, really coming to the conference in Paris in December 2015 with some more negotiation ongoing bilaterally with some of the governments and member states so that we can make some more consistent progress on some of these issues. But it is really a challenge, and really the solution is on more advocacy and negotiation bilaterally outside maybe the established conventions and the conferences, so that we arrive at some of these conferences and opportunities with already some understanding of how we can make some leeway.
Any other questions? Yes.
I'm Colonel Zhao Jingfang from China. My question is to the Rear Admiral. Thank you for your very in-depth presentation and very comprehensive and very instructive. I learned a lot from your presentation. Here, I want one comment and one question. My comment is on the concept of the, the, the string of the pearl strategy. Actually, in China, there does not exist such kind of concept. And this is a concept comes from the Western world, or it is coined by the Western media. I think that it's quite logical for the China's more and more economic and military presence in the Indo-Pacific region, because with reform and opening up since the 1978, China had do a lot of business with the Middle East, with the Africa and Europe. So we need to build some the transit ports along the trade routes to facilitate this kind of trade. And as you mentioned in your presentation, this long trade route is not stable. A lot of piracy, and since 2008, we have to send our fleet to escort the ships, the commercial ships. So I think the logic is quite clear, but there does not for China there does not exist the so-called the geostrategic concept of the strategy of string of pearl, and China has no intention to project its military power in this region. The increasing of China's military forces in the region is only for the to deal with the non-traditional security threats, to make the joint efforts to deal with the piracy. This is my opinion. Of my comment. My question is, objectively, we can witness more and more economic and military presence in the Indo-Pacific region, especially in the South Asia area. So, what's your opinion, or how do you take this kind of thing, that the increasing China's presence, economic and even military presence in the region, and what's the impact of the increasing China's presence upon this region? Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the question. I agree with the comment. When I make a presentation, I have to come up with all the sides of the issue. And if I didn't brought that up, you wouldn't have a chance to come up with your view. So I think I also mentioned in my presentation that China doesn't agree, but then there's something on the table that other countries think that it is the case. And the Sri Lankan government has said that our involvement is purely commercial. So I agree with your comment. But then it is an interpretation, which in a presentation like this, I think I should put into the forum for discussion. But it's not my conclusion. The other thing, whether Sri Lanka is worried, was it your question? When other maritime powers are deployed here, is that your question?
My question is, how do you take China's increasing economic and military presence in this region? And how do you look at the impact of the China's increasing presence upon this region?
I think I mentioned that it is inevitable. I don't think, since the oceans are interconnected. The freedom of seas are thing that is being established with the United Nations Law of the Sea Conference. So every nation will try to protect their national interest. As I shown in that slide, China has all the right to come to protect their interests. 90% of the Chinese energy supply goes through from Gulf to through the Malacca Strait to the Pacific. As in the case of other stakeholders like USA or other countries, when their national interests are at stake, they will come and operate. I mean, the US has their huge national naval base in Diego Garcia, in the Indian Ocean. So I don't think anyone can complain when the countries who can project their power, when they project their power using their ability. But the issue is that we should all work towards common objectives and avoiding conflicts.
Thank you very much for your comments and questions. This session is now concluded. Thank you.